Welcome to the ExecMBA podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'm excited to share my interview with two students in our Executive MBA class of 2023, Matt Gray and Jack Elsea. Matt and Jack recently joined me on the podcast to talk more about their respective MBA journeys. In this conversation, they reflect upon their backgrounds, how they decided to pursue an MBA, what led them to Darden, their experience as Executive MBA students as they transition from their first year to second year in the program, and so much more. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. So without further ado, here's my interview with Matt Gray and Jack Elsea. Matt, Jack, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having us, Brett.
Yeah, Brett, thanks. Thanks for having us.
Well, for our listeners, it's important for them to know the origin story of this particular interview. It began in the evening at Continental Beer Garden here in Rosslyn. There was an Executive MBA class of 2023 social event, and I was standing there working the door. I think both of you came up to me and were like, "We got to get on the podcast. The world needs to hear our stories." And I mean, that's persuasive enough for your podcast host. And here you are. You've made it.
Yeah, I would say that's a fairly accurate story. We've been talking about it amongst ourselves for a little while, and I guess we both saw the same opportunity to talk to the famous Brett Twitty in person and see if we couldn't make it happen.
I don't know about famous. I at least host the ExecMBA podcast. We'll go that far. So of course, Matt, I think you also had reached out because your story, travel into the DC area for the weekend residencies. You're based in Texas. When I met you as a prospective student, I think you were living out in California.
Yeah.
And wanted to share a little bit about your experience as someone who travels in for these weekend residencies. So this is great.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here. And it's, I think there's prospective students and maybe looking at outside of the Rosslyn and Nova area. I think just kind of sharing, my experience and how the program has been so far is something that would be useful. So happy to be here. And that beer garden story definitely checks out. That sounds exactly what I remember.
Well, we're nothing if not accurate here, on the ExecMBA podcast. Our listeners hold us to a very high standard. So let's talk a little bit more about the two of you. So Jack, let me come to you first. Tell us a little bit more about who you are, your background, and what you do currently.
So I guess I kind of came to Darden with a background mostly in engineering as an individual contributor, but also as a manager. And really what I was hoping to do was to kind of change my way of thinking and be able to speak a little bit more confidently and fluently in the business language. That seemed to be and really is the way that people move out of a more technical role, is to be able to translate up to the executives, but also back down to your team on the technical side. So, my background is engineering, very highly technical, and trying to transition out of that space and, a little bit up the corporate ladder more on the business side is really what I was trying to get out of this. And thus far, incredible experience, kind of hitting all the notes that I was hoping it would and more. So, couldn't be more happy with the experience to this point.
Well, that's great. And I was reflecting at hosting an application hotline webinar just last night, and one of the slides that we share on the sessions is reflects the undergraduate major breakdown for the Executive MBA class of 2023, because we think it's such a important, maybe counter narrative to some of the assumptions people have about these kinds of programs and who's in the classroom. I mean, there's almost 50 undergraduate majors represented in your class of about 137 or so people. The top two majors are engineering and poli-sci, political science, almost a quarter of the class. And engineering, invariably, many different flavors of engineering, but engineering is always one of the top, if not the top majors. Jack, I'm going to put you on the spot, speaking on behalf of the engineering community. Why do you think engineers are drawn to the MBA as as a graduate option?
I think it's because it's very different than what we get in undergrad. Very math, science heavy, a lot of physics, a lot of chemistry of various types, and very, very advanced math. But our programs are typically very light on any kind of business classes whatsoever. I had two business classes. One was through an engineering lens, so engineering economics, and then the other was macroeconomics. And that was really the extent of any formal business classes that I had in undergrad. And I found that's the case along many engineering tracks. The business side of of the education tends to get ignored a little bit when you're trying to fill in all of the things that they deem important to graduate an engineer. So those skills tend to lack unless you go outside of your typical engineering track and seek out those classes on your own. So I think a lot of people don't get that until we get a little bit farther in our careers, realize that we have these blind spots, and the best way to go fill those in is really an MBA program.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think it's always interesting to hear about, how do people make this decision? That's where a lot of our listeners are kind of weighing out, why an MBA. And so I appreciate your sharing that additional background as to why maybe engineers think about an MBA program. Matt, how about you? Tell us your story and your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So my background's a little bit different, right? So I've been in functional support my whole career. So came out of undergrad with a business major with an emphasis in HR, and I've been kind of in the HR human capital space my entire career, primarily focused on supporting manufacturing assets, refineries, and really kind of operations. I was in the energy space for about 12 years, so both on the upstream and downstream side of typically larger Fortune 500 globally integrated companies, and really enjoyed the work I was doing. I was always close to supporting the GMs, the P&L, and my kind of epiphany was probably a few years ago of really, working in a function, you kind of unintentionally get siloed because you're focused on whether IT, finance, HR, and you kind of have everything driven to support the business. I kind of wanted to step back and say, okay, how can I be more commercially focused and think about the enterprise view, being so close to the business, wanting to make a bigger impact. And that's where really the conversations with MBA started, and then also just Darden of really has a reputation of grooming, really, really fantastic GMs and the leadership skills. So kind of on the different track from Jack, but I was coming from more, I need to get more crisp on the quantitative side. So decision analysis, refresh on economics, accounting, just going back through that and kind of fine tuning that, because with HR, it's more coaching, consulting, and kind of some of the business partnering, not really into the details of understanding maybe the P&L like you need to. So that was kind of my journey, and Darden has 100% delivered. I mean, just the depth of experiences and just the way I look at business problems today in my current role, it's starting to open doors on commercial opportunities with my current organization, which I made a pivot in December to pharmaceuticals and dermatology. And a lot of that was driven by support from Darden and kind of reputation and moving into the commercial side. So it's been, it's hard to believe being a second year now and just looking at the journey and the process, already the dividends that Darden is yielding in this fantastic program.
Matt, I appreciate your sharing your career update. It seems like a number of people in your class have already made career transitions, which every class has its own rhythm and cycles when it comes to this sort of thing. But I do think the class of 2023 has been maybe a little bit ahead of other classes in terms of having some of these transitions happen earlier in the program.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, for the listeners, at the beginning of every on-grounds residency OGR in Rosslyn, we share a homeroom, which is about 30 minutes of just life updates, and it's both on the personal and professional side. We have a healthy amount of updates on the professional side, going back to September when we matriculated. So it's been fantastic, and I think our cohort is leveraging opportunities while they're learning. I think the market is still, very hot for jobs. And I think that's creating this environment where, our class has a lot of opportunities and we're seizing them.
I appreciate your sharing that. It's always fun to talk about homeroom. It's one of those things that I'm not sure prospective students always know about, but it's such a joyful moment in the weekend residency and the on-grounds residency, the OGRs as we know them in the program, just to have people share all that good news. And then there's clubs and organization announcements, program updates. There's all kinds of things that happen, but lots of news about jobs and babies and new houses and all this kind of stuff. So it's fun to hear all of that and to be part of it. So Jack, you come to Darden, you have an engineering background, all of a sudden you're in business school. Talk to us a little bit about what that adjustment was like.
Yeah, well, first of all, it was an adjustment being back in school anyway. Learning new material at the pace that we do is not something that I'd done for quite a while, to be completely honest with you. You become an expert in your field, and you learn little things along the way, but it's a complete mindset shift to get back into the general learning frame of mind, but then also coming into things that I really have almost no background in. That was there was a little bit of trepidation there, but I do think the case method and way of learning, and then also the cohort and the learning teams that that we have from the outset really helps support you and takes a little bit of that pressure off. That there's people that have done this, people that have different skill sets that can kind of lift you up and help you through some of the material if you're struggling. So it's just that support network that is intentionally built into the Darden experience really helped me get through some of the classes where I felt a little bit less comfortable. The numbers classes, I can navigate those pretty well, but some of the other ones are a little bit more outside of my comfort zone, and it's nice having others that are work professionally in that, or have taken classes or different certifications that you can bounce ideas off of and make sure that you're on the right track.
Can you tell us a little bit about your learning team?
I can. I am an LT16. Originally, we actually combined learning teams with another to form a super learning team, I guess, to just further take some of the pressure off of preparing for the OGR weekends. We've got several people that have a lot of life things going on with family and new careers and potentially moving. So we decided that we'd create a little bigger team for a little bit more support, just with what was going on in people's lives. But generally it's 6 people to start with, and very diverse backgrounds, but also I think very intentionally put together by the program team to hopefully have a good match and have high performing teams that are going to get along and support each other throughout the program. So we are one of the teams that is still together and still thriving together. So kudos to the program team, at least for LT16.
All right. Well, it's nice to hear about a super team. This has happened in other classes where all of a sudden, as people go through the program, the teams get a little bit bigger, teams combine. Why not? Nobody does this program on their own, as we oftentimes note here on the podcast. And so Learning Team is a great example of that. And so it's fun just to hear how students have managed the team, and sometimes teams grow as you go through the course. Well, Matt, tell us a little bit more about your experience getting started as a business school student here at Darden in the Executive MBA program. What was that process like?
Yeah, I mean, similar to Jack, you have to kind of get back in that mindset of, really getting back into learning. And you may come in with a growth mindset and you do that in your job, but really just getting back into the swing of, learning and getting out of your comfort zone on topics that you may not be a subject matter expert in. I think it just takes some resetting. That sense of community for me has been tremendous. I mean, I come in from the Dallas area up to DC, about once a month, And, just the support I have when I get in, I typically have dinner with, someone in the cohort, and we catch up on life. And then, our learning team is kind of sharing the workload and making sure that our strengths are stepping up and helping others understand the content going into an OGR. And then I think just the pace, speaking about that a little bit, I think, Brett, you described it nice of it's a marathon filled with sprints. And we're on a 2-month block with 3 courses per block. And it really just the momentum of the program carries you along. So, we're rounding out Q5 right now. We're in finals period, getting ready for Q6 at second years. And you get, filled up with this momentum and energy. And even though it's a lot, it's just the momentum of the program, what you're learning, how you're progressing through, the relationships of the cohort get stronger. I think we're really hitting a sweet spot, at least for me. During case conversations, they've gotten better over the last 5 or 6 months. We know who is strong in certain expertise areas, and just the case method process in class it's really fascinating, and it helps you learn in that 2-month period that maybe you think, hey, if I just have the syllabus, how am I going to digest all of this in 2 months? When you go through the case method, you see how the faculty are maestros in kind of organizing these case discussions, and then also the cohort getting stronger and participating and sharing their perspectives. It just really fosters a great learning environment. So I think it's been, looking back, it's kind of hard to believe. We're second years. I think, I booked my Charlottesville hotel for graduation about 3 weeks ago, and that felt surreal. But it's been a great time, great process, and really trusting the way that the faculty structures the program to learn so much in such a short amount of time is fascinating.
It's a good tip for all our listeners coming to Darden. As soon as you can, book that graduation hotel room. They go quickly. And if, in case you're curious, Executive MBA graduation is on the same weekend as graduation from the undergrad. And so there's lots of competition for those hotel rooms. So important information here, Matt. Talk to us a little bit about what it's been like traveling in. So you mentioned, you come in, sounds like Thursday night, you catch up with a classmate, and that's not atypical when I talk to people who are traveling in for the program. Oftentimes they will arrive on Thursday just to have some time to get adjusted, to catch up with some folks. Of course, class doesn't officially start. I mean, we talked about homeroom. That typically is around like 11:30 on Friday, but it'd be nice to ease in. What have you found works for you in terms of managing this process?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got kudos to my current, work environment. They're very supportive. My current manager got his MBA while working at a different program, but understands the strain and demand on time. So, for me, I do a lot of prep leading up to an OGR, as we all do. I typically have just under a 3-hour flight coming into DC. So I typically take that time to brush up on the cases on Friday, so I get prepared. Getting in is nice to reconnect. I have dinner with Jack quite often, other folks in the cohort, and just catch up and kind of get ready for the weekend. So for me, it's that prep time ahead of the week. Me getting in on a Thursday really just takes the variables out of flying up on Friday morning, just with flight delays and weather. It's just a personal comfort for me to get up on Thursday, get settled, and then I wake up Friday. I typically check in on work emails if I have any calls. Again, they're supportive of knowing I'm kind of out of pocket at around 10:30 that morning. And then really just go into the weekend, kind of almost refreshed, renewed, and ready to go. And that's worked for me, touch wood, a year in without any massive delays or disruptions. So it's been a pretty good routine so far.
And I imagine you fly into Reagan, DCA?
Yeah, DCA. So DFW to DCA, again, direct shot, usually under 3 hours. And then on the backside, we finish OGR Sunday afternoon. I typically, depending on the OGR, sometimes we finish a little bit earlier. I'll get in anytime between 5 p.m. and 8 p.m. And just with my kind of hybrid work schedule, typically that next Monday, I'm kind of recouping, working from home, catching up on emails, and then getting ready for the week. So it's been, it's ebbs and flows on when it's, more tiresome than others, but it's definitely doable. And for those who are thinking about commuting in, it's definitely, you get into a good routine, you get what works for you. And it's pretty accessible to get into DCA on Thursday or Friday morning if you needed to.
Yeah, lots of direct flights these days to DCA, and it's about for those of you who are less familiar with Rosslyn or Northern Virginia, DCA is a little under 5 miles away from our location here in Rosslyn. So just a few stops on the metro, probably about a 10 to 15 minute cab ride. So pretty easy to get here. Now, I will note, Jack and Matt, you both what you approached as like a unit. You said, "Look, I'd like to. We would like to be on the podcast together." And before we kind of get into the impact of the program thus far, I mean, we talked a little bit about that, and what you're looking forward to in your second year. Tell me how y'all originally connected. Jack, you want to offer sort of the origin story here? Because I love the fact that like sometimes people just approach me individually, but y'all approached me together, and that was great.
Yeah, so we have a class Discord that was up and running before Leadership Residency 1, which for the listeners is a week-long full immersion into the program. So that's when you first really meet everyone and start classes. So a lot of case prep goes into that. Beforehand, there was a kind of hey, if you're getting into Charlottesville the night before, we'll put together something at a brewery. Happy if people can show up. And there was people were talking on Discord about Peloton actually, and Matt Gray throws out there, does anyone have a hydro, which is basically a rowing version of a Peloton? I'm the only other guy that has one, so we actually both end up then meeting at the brewery, and kind of the rest is history. It's not the greatest story, but yeah, I mean, a friendship was born that day.
Matt, does that check out?
Yeah, that's a good description of our meet cute, as they call it. Yeah, I mean, to build on that a little bit, definitely orientation coming in. We have the Discord kind of connection. I reached out to Jack. You're meeting, 140 of your cohort. Everybody is, you want to have your best first impression. A lot of new people. Again, we're all adults here coming in, and how's it going to be? It's been a while since you're in this environment, and met Jack at the brewery that night ahead of orientation. Just had a really deep conversation, as with other people. And from there, we just kind of, spun off a pretty close friendship. And we've been able to take a couple trips in the program on the side, and just, again, spending a lot of good time. And I think that's one point on the program of, I wasn't expecting that coming in. You understand, hey, I'm coming to Darden, the faculty, the case method, the reputation, a very, really going to respect my cohort and probably make some friends, but just kind of the lifelong relationships you build, which is hard to do when you're, mid 30s. You kind of have your community set for the most part. But it's been really refreshing to make new friends. And obviously Jack is one of those I consider, a lifelong friend after the program. And it just really helps. You're going through this really unique experience together, the ups and downs. We've had calls. Hey, I'm struggling with this week, or work is slammed. How's it going? And just talking through that with somebody who's going through a similar experience, I think you naturally bond a little bit quicker than maybe if you weren't going through it together. So it's been great to have that. And I'd say our cohort, I'm biased, but I put them up against anybody. It's the Exec 23s are fantastic, and we work hard and we play hard, but it's been a good experience so far.
Well, what I love about what you both shared is that there were already connections happening prior to the start of school, which I would say for our listeners, if you're wondering, should I do that? The answer is yes, you absolutely should, because it takes some of the stress out of starting the program. You've already met people, you've made some connections, you feel like you know a few people, so that when you walk in on the first day of school, I know this is hard to believe because a lot of people are kind of in their 30s, 40s when they do this kind of program, like first day of school, whatever. It feels like the first day of school. Like it's like a little bit of nervousness. I would say I always pick up on that because we introduce the class and share some things about the class. And you can feel that when you stand on the stage, like everybody's not quite sure. Am I doing the right thing? How am I doing? Am I okay? Am I supposed to be here? All these kind of thoughts run through people's heads. And so the more connections you can make, the more personal connections you can have prior to the start of school, it takes some of that stress out of it. Would y'all agree? Would y'all agree with that?
Definitely. And I would also say that, especially for us, we were just coming off the pandemic, and, that was really the first time that Darden had actually been in person for a couple of years. So a lot of us are used to traveling for work and having work conferences and just generally being more out and about, whether, going to bars, restaurants, whatever, with friends. A lot of those things have been kind of eliminated over the past 2 years. So you're now thrown into a very social situation where you probably haven't had a lot of practice. So I think the anxiety level was maybe even a little bit higher than it normally would be when you're meeting, 160 of your new closest friends all at once. But yeah, definitely reach out to people and try and make some of those personal connections beforehand.
Yeah. And I would say don't be afraid to use the apps like Discord if that's something foreign or you're not familiar or you don't want to weigh into a conversation because you may be just on the sideline. We had some classmates that were kind of later to the game and said, oh, they missed so many great conversations on the Darden before Darden and leading up to orientation. So, definitely use all the resources available. And don't be afraid to put yourself out there and put, hey, if you share a Peloton or a hydro or you're into breweries, just put that out there and you'll be amazed of how much it's receptive, and you can come in with, one or two people that you've already had some sort of connection with to kind of take the edge off.
Yeah, I've mentioned this in other podcasts, but I would say over the past 2 to 3 years, certainly since the pandemic has become part of our lives, I've started to hear more from people about this ability to meet a lot of people at the same time or to make more social connections, because I think that's hard to do right now. Maybe it's just hard to do in the modern world in this particular moment generally, but I do think it feels like the pandemic may have accelerated this for people, and so the opportunity to be in a space with 135 or so really interesting people, make some of these connections, meet a whole bunch of people all at the same time, have this kind of shared experience. I think maybe that has even more meaning to people right now. That's just so I'm trying to read between the lines as people come here on the podcast or I talk with prospective students. Does that resonate with y'all?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think a lot of human nature, craves social interaction, and it was a great ability to, to kind of get back out there and stretch your social wings a little bit and meet a lot of people that are in the same place for the same reason that you are. Everyone is there knowing that it's going to be a lot of work, but everyone's also there, knowing that it's going to be a lot of work. So you've got people that are willing to, put in time and effort, and then also put in time and effort into the relationships and support each other along the way. So while it was meeting a lot of people, it was meeting a lot of people that are, there for essentially the same end goal. So I think that helped.
Well, let's talk about the second year now that y'all are wrapping up quarter 5, moving into quarter 6. Matt, what are you looking forward to in the second year? Are you involved with anything? Any electives that you're excited about? What are your oh man, I'm really excited about this?
Yeah, it's a great question, Brett. I mean, I think, you learning so much as a first year, right? You go through a lot of the core classes and really kind of rebuild that foundation of kind of, classically trained business, if you will. Second year, I'm really excited about, I'm on the IMBA track, not the GIMBA, which just means I take one global residency, and mine's coming up in October for Finland and Estonia. And I'm really excited about that. So that's one kind of key highlight I'm really looking forward to. Beginning Q7 is when you get kind of healthy into electives. One thing that actually Jack and I are both doing is one of the Darden independent studies. So we met an entrepreneur out on the West Coast. We've been kind of building the business case, on the side for the last month. And that's something we're going to be putting forward to do the Darden independent study, which basically for us, this would be building out a business case, having an assigned faculty to help with this, to kind of shepherd it along. And that's something that if you asked me 2 years ago, would you see yourself doing that? I would have said no way. And just to have that ability to explore this as a, entrepreneurial track and kind of consulting with this individual who has a business idea is just something that's got me really excited. So those are two key highlights of kind of second year that I'm really, really jazzed up about.
Have you figured out the faculty member you'll be working closely with?
Not yet. We're getting close. We've had a couple of conversations with the entrepreneur, and I think we're probably leaning towards Jack can weigh in here, but either operations or maybe marketing, depending on, we need a little more information from the entrepreneur, but I think we're getting close to fine tuning it.
All right, more to come. We'll have to stay tuned. I appreciate the shout out of the independent study. We always mention it to prospective students because it's become so very popular with executive MBA students, particularly people who have an entrepreneurial interest and want to pursue that, develop a business plan, kind of figure out, do I have a minimally viable product here? They want to work closely with a faculty member on that. It's a great opportunity to do so. Jack, as you look forward to second year, what are you really excited about? Any clubs, organizations, any electives that you circled?
Yeah, so I'm on a couple committees. I'm serving as the VP of Finance, so on the ESA board, which has some pretty exciting I guess perks to it as well. We were able to take a specific leadership learning lab class this last quarter, which was a really solid class, very impactful. So if there's anyone out there that's potentially toying with trying to take a student leadership position, there are definite perks to serving in that capacity. It's not just time out of your day. You definitely get something out of it as well, along with working with some of the other leaders. You just form deeper friendships with them as well. And then similar to Matt, international travel. I'm actually on the GEMBA track though, so I've got 3 trips here on the back end of the program. So October, December, February. So I'll be pretty busy taking those. I'm doing Finland, Estonia, Australia, and then Morocco. So a couple destinations there that probably weren't on the short list for personal travel. So if you can go get some college credit and also experience a new culture and see what it's like to do business down there, I think those are the two things that I'm most excited about.
Yeah, I appreciate the point about maybe these are places that I wouldn't have thought to travel, personally. Lottie Carr, who manages these trips for our executive format students, always throws that out there on the webinar that we host for incoming students about global opportunities, that oftentimes students will choose locations that they're not certain that they would have gone to otherwise, because, well, you get to do it with a really interesting group of people. And typically once people go on one global trip, they want to do more. So that's the case for GEMBA. I would say is invariably we have a few students in every class that are IMBA format, and they go on a trip and they're like, okay, I get it now. I understand. Did y'all coordinate on Finland, Estonia, or did that just work out that way?
I think there's a little bit of coordination over wine one night. I think that's how it came about.
I appreciate that. Jack, am I right that you're also involved with the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee? I feel like I've heard an announcement or two from you in homeroom.
Yeah, I am. And, we're really starting to kind of find our groove with some of the initiatives that we've been planning over the last couple months. Just the amount of effort and that it takes to get some of these things off the ground, because we're really trying to build on some of the things that have been done in the past, but also really try to start at the base level and rethink how we want to leave our mark as the diversity inclusion board, and then be able to pass those things on to the next class if they choose to continue those initiatives or not. But we want to be able to hand over something, not just do an event, but hand over something that can potentially leave a mark for years to come with other diversity inclusion boards if they choose to continue pursuing that.
Yeah, y'all are doing some great things. We've talked about the microaggression wall that's been posted past 2 weekend residencies here in Rosslyn. The thing that was really compelling about that is not just sort of documenting here's people's experiences with microaggressions and this is what these things are, but also sharing how this made the person feel and giving that additional sort of personal context. I thought that was really tremendous.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. It was important for us to crowdsource those from our cohort, just to have some additional impact versus just going for a Google search and saying this is a microaggression. But bringing it into perspective of these are the people that were around every day. These are people that you care for. These are your friends, and these are the type of things that some of them put up with quite often. And it really just drives home the point of how hurtful they can be, and how we all just need to be a little bit more cognizant of the things that we say and how they can have different meanings to different people. So that was one thing that's very important, is to get source those from the class itself.
I appreciate your sharing that, and I'm looking forward to what's to come. I mean, your class has made no small plans, right? So when I talk to the Executive Student Association leadership, they have big things in mind. When I talk to all the clubs and organizations, those leaders, they have big things in mind. Of course, the DEI committee are doing things and hopes to accomplish even more in the coming year. So it'll be fun to see what the class comes up with. I'm curious, when you look back on the past year and where you started to where you are now, Matt, what has been the impact in terms of your growth, development? Is there something that jumps out to you when you think about these 2 points in your life?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much there, Brett. I think while you're in the moment and the momentum of the program's carrying you along, it's you're constantly looking forward. So when you take time and kind of reflect back, I mean, just the breadth and depth of experiences thus far. I obviously see business obstacles a little bit differently than I did before, actually drastically different. And you think to consider other perspectives. That's kind of the program teaches you to think, not just your own perspective and your baseline, but taking others into account to make the best decision. But I think almost like not sounding cheesy, but just how you see the world. I mean, just relationships, are different, where you choose to spend your time, where I've become much more intentional because you have to be with this program. And I think it's created, even in the sense of the chaotic weeks or quarters, it's this sense of calm that you know where you're spending your time, how you're thinking through issues, how you're approaching challenges, and just an extreme level of confidence that you can really take on anything. I think that's been the big takeaway. So outside of the learnings of just what you're experiencing day in and day out with the cohort, the learning team, and the faculty, just you as a human in your own growth, the confidence has been extremely enhanced throughout this program, looking at the first year.
Been asking that question of a number of your classmates here on the podcast, and almost to a person, people say confidence. Why do you think that is?
I mean, I think if you grew up, Matt, you're going to be faced with this amount of work plus your social life and your day job, and these are the topics you're going to be learning in the 2-month period. Even coming in with a high level of confidence, I said, this is impossible, right? So when you actually get in that and you learn how to prioritize where your strengths are, enhancing some of your areas for development and opportunities, when you see that come together and you're seeing success in that, I think it just gives you a sense of calm and confidence. There's really nothing you can't handle, because we're juggling so many things and doing it, maybe not with ease, but doing it successfully. And that's recognized within the cohort and outside as well. So I have a huge support system in my social network and also my current work environment, and just that continued support and, really recognizing all the demands on the time and managing to successfully, complete and manage through. You just have this sense of confidence that there's really nothing you can't handle, which is really refreshing and gives you a ton of confidence.
I appreciate your sharing that, Matt, and that resonates with what I've heard from both current students and alumni, that like this just expands your own sense of your potential, what you can do. So Jack, how about you? When you think about where you started to where you are now, how have you grown? How have you developed?
Very similar to Matt. I would say confidence is definitely a word that comes to mind. Another thing for me is I'd been advocating kind of internally at the company I'm at for myself to try and take on more business side roles outside of just directly engineering, and had a lot of good conversations about it, but nothing really ever came of it until I was about 2 months into this program, and all of a sudden, fully on the business side now doing market development. So it is one of those things where it's, maybe it was less, I think they knew that I could do it, but I think there was a little bit maybe trepidation of, was I fully committed? And then you show that you're fully committed, you're going to this program, and then you basically immediately can start a little bit talking the talk as well. And, I've found that there are things that we learn every week that I could have applied the previous week in my job had I have known that, or the next week something comes up that I learned the previous week, and you just are so much more clued into the conversation, and it's not just sitting there listening. You can actually sit, listen, internalize what they're talking about, and then formulate some thoughts back. And that just shows and, proves a little bit that, maybe that you belong there. And that kind of builds your confidence going into those conversations, and builds other people's confidence in you that, that they can trust you with certain things that, maybe your direct experience wouldn't lead them to believe if they just read your resume. So I think for me personally, that's, been one impactful thing.
All right. Well, we always ask everybody the same last question: a word of advice, a tip, something you would encourage our listeners to consider as they navigate their own MBA journeys. Jack, can I come to you first?
Yeah. So I think the biggest piece of advice is that know that it's going to be a lot of work, but also really do take to heart that you don't have to do it by yourself. You do have a support network. You've got a great cohort. You'll have a learning team. If you're struggling, the program team, reach out to them. They'll do whatever they can. It's really a supportive environment. It is a lot of work, but you can get through it. Everyone gets through it. You won't be any different. But just make sure that if you need something, reach out, lean into your support network, and you'll be just fine, and you'll learn a heck of a lot and meet, some lifelong friends along the way. So they couldn't be any more pleased with the experience to date.
All right, Matt, you get the last word here. A piece of advice for our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, while the listeners are considering, this program and maybe others, it is a bit of a marathon, but it is definitely a journey worth pursuing. I think the mixture of learnings, both from a professional setting, and also just the way you view your relationships and life and global issues is significant, and it's life changing in a positive manner. And while those are getting ready for potential starting the program, before things get too hairy, I would say really sit down and prioritize what's important right now, because there will be ebbs and flows in the program that you can't go to that birthday party or that friend's wedding, and you have to kind of prioritize what's important, and it's not always the same every week. So take a moment before things get too chaotic to really understand these are my glass balls, if you will, and I can't let them break, and these are plastic and they can be ebbs and flows, just to kind of mentally prepare yourself for the 2-year marathon before you get into it.
All good advice. Thank you both for coming on the podcast and sharing all these great insights with our listeners. And congratulations again on reaching this point in the program. How exciting. Moving into the 2nd year. Graduation will be here. Make your hotel room reservations if you haven't done it already.
Absolutely. If you haven't made them now, I don't know if you're going to get one, Brett. I think they go fast is an understatement.
Absolutely. Brett, thank you so much for having us. Really enjoyed it, and thank you.
Yeah, appreciate you having us, Brett. Always a pleasure.
And that was my interview with Matt Gray and Jack Elsea, 2 students in our Executive MBA class of 2023. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at exec, that's EXEC, MBA @darden.virginia.edu. Till next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.